The room is quiet, but not peaceful. A phone screen glows in the dark as someone scrolls past yet another video, searching for something they cannot name. Across the city, a man sits in his car long after the engine has stopped, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every mistake he wishes he could undo. In a hospital hallway, a woman grips her hands together, whispering words she hasn't said in years, unsure if anyone is still listening. Different lives, different stories, the same silent question echoing beneath them all. Is it too late for me? What if it isn't? What if, no matter how far someone has fallen, no matter how many times they've failed, walked away, or given up, there is still a heart that has never stopped waiting? No spotlight reveals it, no voice forces its way in, but it is there, steady, patient, unchanging, a heart that has seen every hidden tear, every regret buried behind a forced smile, every night spent wishing for a second chance. Not a distant presence, not a cold judgment, but something alive, something that still calls, even when it's ignored. There are people who have tried to outrun it. Some have drowned it out with noise, filling their days so they never have to sit in silence. Others have convinced themselves they no longer believe. That faith is just a memory from another life. And yet, in the quietest moments, when the distractions fade and the walls come down, something stirs again. A pull, a whisper, a reminder that they were never truly alone. Somewhere, a mother thinks about the child she hasn't spoken to in years. Somewhere, a young man carries guilt he cannot explain, afraid to face what he's become. Somewhere, a person who once believed deeply now wonders if they've gone too far to return. But the truth remains unchanged, no matter how distant it feels. That heart has not moved. It has not turned away. It has not forgotten. It has not closed itself off in disappointment. Instead, it waits, with a patience that defies human understanding, not demanding perfection, not requiring a flawless past, only asking for one thing: a moment of honesty, a single step back. Because this is not a story about people who have it all together. It is about those who feel lost, tired, and uncertain, and the quiet, persistent presence that refuses to give up on them. And tonight, as everything slows down and the noise fades, there is an invitation, simple, but powerful. Come back. Not when everything is fixed. Not when everything makes sense. But now. The invitation does not arrive with noise. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed, like a shift in the air. The scrolling slows. The engine finally turns off. The restless pacing in the hospital corridor softens into stillness. In different corners of the world, something begins to change, not outside, but within. A young woman places her phone face down for the first time in hours. The silence feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, as if the absence of noise exposes something deeper. A man who has spent the entire day avoiding his thoughts leans back in his seat and exhales. Longer than he has all day. In a small apartment, an elderly voice whispers the words of a prayer learned decades ago. Words that feel both distant and strangely close. No one announces it, but each of them is stepping into something sacred. It doesn't look the same for everyone. There are no perfect settings. No required conditions. For one, it's a dimly lit room with nothing but the faint hum of a ceiling fan. For another, it's the quiet inside a parked car, the city lights flickering through the windshield. For someone else, it's a hospital bench, where hope and fear sit side by side. Yet in each place, something invisible begins to settle, a sense that this moment is different from all the others. The noise of the world doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip. A familiar gesture follows, almost instinctive. A hand moves slowly, tracing the sign of the cross, forehead, chest, shoulders, simple, deliberate, grounding. It's not about ritual alone, it's about recognition. A quiet acknowledgement that this moment is no longer just another passing second. It has become a meeting place. And in that meeting place, there is no rush. No one is asked to perform. No one is required to have the right words. The pressure to explain everything, to justify every feeling, begins to loosen. For a brief moment, the need to be understood by the world fades, replaced by something deeper, the possibility of being known completely, without defense. A man who hasn't prayed in years hesitates, unsure where to begin. The words feel distant, like a language he once spoke fluently but has long forgotten. Still, He tries. Not perfectly, not confidently, but honestly. And somehow, that is enough. A mother closes her eyes. Not to escape reality, but to face it differently. The weight she carries doesn't vanish. But it no longer feels like it must be carried alone. In that stillness, something unseen begins to hold what she cannot. Across these quiet moments, a pattern emerges. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, but unmistakable. The space is no longer empty. There is a presence, gentle, patient, and unwavering. It does not interrupt. It does not accuse. It simply remains, as if it has always been there, waiting for the moment it would finally be noticed. And as each person lingers a little longer in that silence, the distance they once felt begins to close, not through effort, but through surrender to the moment itself. This is where everything begins to change. Not with answers, not with solutions, but with presence. And in that presence, something fragile starts to awaken, an openness, a readiness, a quiet willingness to step further, into whatever comes next. The silence holds longer than expected. No one rushes to fill it now. What once felt uncomfortable begins to feel necessary, like a door that cannot stay closed forever. In that stillness, something deeper starts to surface, not the polished version of a life, not the story told to others, but the truth that has been carefully avoided. A man in the parked car lowers his head, his hands tightening slightly on his lap. The presence he felt moments ago hasn't left. If anything, it feels closer now. And with that closeness comes something he didn't anticipate, not judgment, not condemnation, but clarity, the kind that strips away excuses. He remembers the words he said that he can't take back, the moment he chose anger instead of patience, the decision that seemed small at the time but changed everything. For a long time, he told himself it wasn't that bad, that others had done worse, that life just moved on. But here, in this quiet, those defenses begin to fall apart. Across the city, the young woman sitting in the dim room feels something similar. She had spent so long distracting herself, music, messages, endless scrolling, anything to avoid this exact moment. But now there is nowhere to hide. The presence she stepped into does not force her to speak, yet it invites her to be honest. She closes her eyes, and the memories come, not all at once, but enough to feel the weight. The times she compromised what she knew was right. The relationships she walked away from without explanation. The quiet guilt she buried beneath independence and confidence. It wasn't just what she did. It was who she had slowly become. In the hospital hallway, the woman who had been whispering earlier now pauses. Her prayer changes. It is no longer made of memorized words. It becomes something raw, unfiltered. There are no perfect sentences, no rehearsed lines, just fragments of truth, spoken softly into the silence. I should have done more. I knew better. I turned away. The words are not loud, but they carry weight. And yet, something unexpected happens. The moment they are spoken, they do not echo back with rejection. They do not collapse under shame. Instead, they remain, held, as if the space itself is strong enough to carry them. This is the moment many fear. The moment of truth. The moment when the distance between who someone is and who they were meant to be becomes undeniable. It is not comfortable. It is not easy, but it is real. There are no comparisons here. No measuring against others. Each person stands alone with their own story, their own choices, their own regrets, and for the first time in a long time, there is no running from it. But what makes this moment different from all the others is not just the honesty, it is what follows. Because the presence that remains does not turn away from brokenness. It does not step back in disappointment. It does not demand that everything be fixed before anything can begin again. Instead, it draws closer. Closer to the man who feels he has failed too many times. Closer to the woman who wonders if she has lost herself. Closer to the one who carries quiet regret through long nights. And in that closeness, something begins to shift. Not the past, not the consequences, but the way they are held. For the first time, brokenness is no longer something to hide. It becomes something that can be brought forward, fully seen, fully known. And somehow, in that exposure, there is the beginning of something unexpected. Not condemnation, but mercy. Mercy changes the atmosphere, but it does not remove the choice. The silence remains, now heavier with meaning. Each person who has stepped this far can feel it. This moment cannot stay suspended forever. Something must be done with what has been revealed. The man in the car leans back, eyes closed. For a long time, he believed control was the only way forward. Fix it, manage it, hide it, move on, but none of that worked. Not really. The more he tried to hold everything together, the more it slipped through his hands. And now, sitting in the quiet, he realizes something difficult. He cannot carry this life the way he has been carrying it. Not anymore. Across the city, the young woman opens her eyes slowly. The weight she felt before hasn't disappeared, but it has changed. It no longer feels like something she has to outrun. It feels like something she is being asked to release. Her first instinct is resistance. Letting go sounds too risky, too uncertain. What would happen if she stopped trying to control everything? If she admitted she didn't have all the answers? In the hospital hallway, the woman presses her hands together again, but this time not out of fear. Something steadier has taken its place. She has already said the hardest truths. There is nothing left to hide. And in that honesty, a quiet realization rises. Maybe the next step is not to explain more, but to surrender. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but sincerely. No voice demands it, no force pushes them, yet the invitation is unmistakable. Let go. The man exhales, slower this time. The words don't come easily, but they come honestly, not polished, not rehearsed, just real. I can't do this on my own. It is a simple sentence, but it breaks something open. The young woman hesitates, then finally allows the thought she has been resisting. I don't want to live like this anymore. In the hallway, the woman lowers her head slightly, her voice almost a whisper. Take it, all of it. Different words, the same surrender. This is not about giving up. It is about giving over. The past, with all its regrets. The present, with all its confusion. The future, with all its uncertainty. Nothing is held back, not the fears, not the doubts, not even the parts that feel too broken to offer. And in that moment, something shifts again, not outwardly, but deeply. The need to control begins to loosen. The pressure to fix everything immediately begins to fade. For the first time, there is space, space to breathe, space to trust, space to believe that something greater can carry what they cannot. The presence that has been there all along does not hesitate. It receives everything. Not with hesitation, not with conditions, but with a quiet certainty. As if this was always the turning point. As if this surrender, imperfect as it is exactly what was needed. No lightning, no dramatic signs, just a deep, steady peace that begins to settle where tension once lived. The man opens his eyes. But something is different now. The road ahead hasn't changed, but the weight of walking it alone is gone. The young woman sits still, no longer reaching for distraction. The silence no longer feels empty. It feels full. In the hospital hallway, the woman breathes more freely, as if something invisible has been lifted. Nothing has been solved yet. Nothing has been erased. But everything has been placed in different hands. And for the first time, that feels like enough. The surrender does not end the struggle, it changes its rhythm. What felt like a single moment begins to unfold into something steadier. Something repeatable, not a dramatic breakthrough, but a pattern, quiet, persistent, almost like a heartbeat that had always been there, now finally noticed. The man in the car doesn't start the engine. Not yet. His hands rest loosely now, no longer gripping for control. The words he spoke linger in the air. And for a moment, he isn't sure what comes next. There is no immediate answer. No sudden clarity about how everything will be fixed. Only a silence that feels different than before. Then, almost instinctively, another sentence forms. I trust you. It feels unfamiliar on his tongue, like a phrase he hasn't used in years. He says it again, slower this time, not to convince himself, not to perform, just to stay present in what he has already begun. I trust you. Across the city, the young woman shifts slightly in her seat. The urge to reach for her phone flickers again, but she resists it. The quiet no longer feels like something to escape. It feels like something to stay inside of. She doesn't have answers either, about her future, her choices, or how to repair what has been broken. But the need to figure it all out right now begins to loosen its grip. Her voice is softer, almost a whisper. I trust you. The words don't solve anything. They don't erase what happened. But they do something else. They create space, space between fear and reaction, space between uncertainty and panic. In the hospital hallway, the woman sits back against the wall, her breathing more even now. The situation in front of her hasn't changed. The waiting, the unknown, it's all still there. But something within her has shifted just enough to hold it differently. She closes her eyes again. I trust you. Not once, not twice, but again and again, each time with a little more steadiness. The phrase begins to take on a rhythm, not forced, not mechanical, but natural, like breathing in and out, like a pulse that steadies the chaos inside. It doesn't demand understanding, it doesn't require certainty, it simply anchors the moment. For the man in the car, it interrupts the spiral of overthinking. For the young woman, it quiets the constant need for distraction. For the woman in the hallway, it softens the weight of waiting. Nothing external changes. The road is still unclear. The outcomes are still unknown. But the way they stand in the middle of it begins to transform. I trust you. It becomes more than words. It becomes a choice, repeated. Sometimes fragile, sometimes strong. A decision to lean into something unseen rather than retreat into fear. A refusal to let uncertainty dictate the next step. And as the rhythm continues, something subtle but undeniable takes place. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses its authority. The doubts don't vanish, but they no longer dominate. The future remains unwritten, but it no longer feels unbearable. The presence that received their surrender now meets them in this repetition, not with new instructions. Not with immediate solutions, but with a quiet, sustaining strength. Not everything needs to be understood in order to be trusted. The man finally looks up, no longer trapped in his thoughts. The young woman sits still, no longer reaching for escape. The woman in the hallway breathes, no longer overwhelmed by what she cannot control. The rhythm continues. I trust you. Not as a conclusion, but as a path forward, step by step, moment by moment, carrying them into whatever comes next. The rhythm steadies the moment, but it also opens something else, space for what has been carried in silence. Trust makes room for truth, not in general terms, but in specifics, names, faces, situations that refuse to be reduced to vague prayers. This is where the story becomes personal. The man in the car glances at the passenger seat, empty but not really. There is someone on his mind, the person he hasn't called. The conversation he keeps postponing. The words, I trust you, linger. But now they are followed by something more direct, more vulnerable. Help me fix this. It's not polished, it's not detailed, but it is specific, and for the first time, he allows that situation to be seen, not just by himself, but by the presence he has begun to trust. Across the city, the young woman's thoughts turn to a different kind of weight. Not a single moment, but a pattern, restlessness, pressure, the quiet anxiety that never fully leaves. She has managed it for so long, hidden it behind competence and independence. But now, in this stillness, she stops managing and starts naming. I need peace. The words feel almost too simple for something so complex. But they carry truth, and in that truth, there is a shift, not in the circumstances, but in the way she holds them. In the hospital hallway, the woman's intentions are impossible to ignore. They are not abstract. They are immediate, urgent, tied to a life she cannot control. Her voice is steady now, even as emotion rises beneath it. Please, be with them. No long explanation, no need to justify the fear or the hope. Just a direct offering of what matters most. This is where the prayer deepens. It is no longer only about surrender or trust in general. It becomes about real lives, real struggles, real people, the things that keep someone awake at night, the decisions that feel too heavy to make alone, the situations that seem beyond repair. And in different places, more voices begin to form. A father thinking about his family, unsure how to provide what they need. A student facing uncertainty about the future, overwhelmed by expectations. Someone carrying grief that hasn't faded, even after time has passed. Someone else battling something invisible, a struggle no one else fully sees. Each one brings something different. No two stories are the same. No two intentions sound alike. But they share something essential, they matter. Not because they are perfect, Not because they are impressive, but because they are real. The presence that has been there from the beginning does not sort them, rank them, or compare them. It receives them all, quietly, completely. Nothing is too small, nothing is too complicated, nothing is dismissed. The man in the car sits a little straighter, as if the burden he named is no longer his alone. The young woman feels a calm she cannot fully explain, even though nothing external has changed. The woman in the hallway holds on to hope, not certainty, but something close enough to keep breathing steady. The rhythm continues underneath it all. I trust you. But now it carries names. It carries situations. It carries stories. And as each intention is placed into that steady presence, something becomes clear. Not everything will be resolved immediately. Not every outcome will be understood. But none of it is being carried in isolation anymore. Every story, no matter how hidden, has been brought into the light. And in that light, it is no longer just a burden. It becomes a prayer. The intentions have been spoken. And for a moment, everything feels gathered, names, fears, hopes, placed into something greater. But the path does not become clearer. If anything, it becomes more demanding, because now comes the question that cannot be avoided. What happens when trust is tested? The man in the car reaches for his phone, hesitates, then lowers it again. The call he knows he needs to make still feels heavy. Nothing about it has become easier. The words, "I trust you," echo in his mind. But now they press deeper, asking something more than repetition. Do you trust, even if it doesn't go the way you want? Across the city, the young woman feels the familiar tension return, creeping back into her thoughts. The calm she experienced moments ago is fragile, easily shaken by uncertainty. The future is still unclear. The questions remain unanswered. The temptation to take control again, to plan, to fix, to force an outcome, rises quickly. But something within her resists. Not because she has certainty, but because she has chosen something else. In the hospital hallway, the woman stands slowly, her body tired, her mind stretched between hope and fear. The outcome she is waiting for is still unknown. No sign has appeared, no miracle has interrupted the silence. The presence she felt has not removed the uncertainty. It has only asked her to remain. And that is where the struggle sharpens. Because trusting when things feel peaceful is one thing. Trusting when nothing changes is another. This is the edge, the place where faith either deepens or retreats. The man finally speaks again. But the words are different now. They are not calm. They carry tension, resistance, honesty. I don't understand, but I trust you. The sentence doesn't resolve his situation. It doesn't remove the risk of rejection, the possibility of failure. But it anchors him in something stronger than outcomes. The young woman exhales slowly, letting go of the urge to control what hasn't even happened yet. Even if this doesn't work out, I trust you. It is not confidence in the future. It is confidence beyond it. In the hallway, the woman closes her eyes once more, her voice steady despite everything inside her that wants certainty. No matter what happens, I trust you. The words are no longer just comfort. They are commitment. And in that moment, something shifts, not in circumstances, but in depth. Trust moves beyond emotion, beyond convenience, beyond understanding. It becomes absolute. The fear is still there, but it no longer dictates the next step. The unknown is still present, but it no longer paralyzes. Each person stands at the edge of what they cannot control, and chooses not to turn back. This is the climax no one sees outwardly. No dramatic event. No visible breakthrough. But internally, everything changes. The man picks up his phone again, this time. He doesn't hesitate. The young woman remains still, choosing presence over panic. The woman in the hallway breathes through the uncertainty, no longer consumed by it. The trust they speak now is not fragile. It has been tested. And it holds. I trust you. Not because everything is clear. Not because everything is safe. But because something deeper has taken root, something that does not depend on outcomes. And in that depth, they step forward, into whatever comes next. Trust holds, but it begins to ask a deeper question. Who is the one being trusted? Because trust without knowing can only go so far. At some point, it needs a foundation. Something solid enough to carry everything that has just been surrendered. The answers do not come all at once. They unfold, slowly, like a series of glimpses, each one revealing a different facet. A different truth. The man in the car sits quietly, no longer rushing ahead. The fear of what might happen hasn't disappeared, but it has been met with something new. As the silence continues, a realization begins to take shape, not as a thought he constructed, but as something he recognizes. The one he is trusting is not distant. He is mercy. Not the kind that overlooks everything, but the kind that sees fully and still chooses to remain. The kind that does not walk away when things become complicated. Across the city, the young woman feels her breathing steady. The uncertainty she carries hasn't been resolved, but something within her begins to anchor differently. The presence she stepped into is not fragile. It does not shift with her emotions. It is constant. It is peace. Not the absence of problems, but something deeper, a steadiness that holds even when nothing else does. In the hospital hallway, the woman's eyes open slowly. The waiting continues, but it no longer feels empty. There is a sense that she is not standing alone in that space. The presence beside her is not passive. It is strength. Not forceful, not overwhelming, but quiet, enduring strength that remains when human strength runs out. And as these moments unfold, more becomes clear. He is not only mercy. He is not only peace. He is not only strength. He is refuge, for those who have nowhere else to go. He is patience, for those who feel they have run out of chances. He is compassion, for wounds that no one else can see. He is truth, for hearts that have been lost in confusion. Each realization builds on the last, not as information, but as recognition, not something learned externally, but something discovered within the experience itself. The man in the car feels it as a quiet assurance that he is not facing his situation alone. The young woman senses it as a grounding presence that does not waver, even when her thoughts do. The woman in the hallway holds onto it as a strength she did not have before. This is not a list to memorize. It is a revelation to encounter. Each name, each description, each truth adds depth to the trust that has already been spoken. The words, "I trust you," are no longer directed into the unknown. They are anchored in something real. Something that has shown itself, not through spectacle, but through presence. And as this understanding grows, the rhythm returns again, but with new meaning. I trust you. Now it is trust in mercy that does not reject. Trust in peace that does not collapse. Trust in strength that does not fail. The presence that has been there from the beginning is no longer undefined. It is known, not completely, not fully understood, but truly recognized. And in that recognition, the trust deepens, becoming something steadier, something rooted. Not just a response to a moment, but a relationship that continues to unfold. Recognition changes the direction of a life. Even when nothing around it has moved, the same roads remain, the same rooms, the same unresolved situations, but something within has shifted just enough to make a different step possible. The man in the car finally turns the key. The engine starts. But he doesn't rush away. The call he avoided is no longer just a burden, it has become a decision. Not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because the fear that once stopped him no longer holds the same authority. He scrolls to the name, pauses for a fraction of a second, and presses call. His voice isn't perfect when the line connects, but it is real. For the first time, he speaks without defense. Across the city, the young woman stands up slowly. The room looks exactly the same, yet it doesn't feel the same. The distractions she once reached for no longer define the moment. There is a quiet clarity now, not a detailed plan, but a direction. She walks toward the window, letting the light fall across her face, and something subtle but undeniable settles inside her. She doesn't need to become someone else overnight, but she no longer wants to remain who she was. In the hospital hallway, the woman straightens her posture. The waiting has not ended, but it has changed shape. She is no longer pacing between hope and fear. She is standing within something steadier. When the door finally opens, she steps forward, not with certainty, but with a calm she did not have before. This is where transformation begins, not as a dramatic event, but as a series of quiet decisions. A different response instead of the usual reaction. A moment of patience where there used to be frustration. A willingness to forgive where resentment once stayed. Nothing about it is forced. It doesn't come from pressure or obligation. It flows from something deeper. Something that has been placed within rather than built from the outside. The man listens more than he speaks now, allowing space for a conversation that once would have turned into conflict. The young woman chooses stillness over distraction, presence over escape. The woman in the hallway holds on to hope without being consumed by fear. Each action is small, each step almost unnoticeable, but together, they begin to form a new pattern, a different way of living that wasn't possible before. The past has not been erased. The memories are still there. The consequences still real, but they no longer define the direction forward. Something else has taken root, something quieter, but stronger. A new way of seeing. A new way of choosing. A new way of being. And at the center of it all is the same presence that has been there from the beginning, now not only trusted, not only recognized, but allowed to shape what comes next. The man ends the call, not with everything resolved, but with something restored. The young woman breathes deeply, no longer searching for escape. The woman in the hallway steps into whatever comes next, grounded in something she cannot lose. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a new one. A heart that was once guarded begins to open. A life that was once controlled begins to trust. Not perfectly, not all at once, but truly. The journey does not end where the moment ends. It carries forward, into ordinary hours, into familiar places, into lives that now feel slightly, but unmistakably, different. The man drives through the same streets, but the silence inside the car is no longer heavy. It is steady. Not every answer has come. Not every situation has resolved. But something within him has found direction. He no longer moves just to escape the past. He moves with a quiet intention, to live differently than before. Across the city, the young woman steps outside, the air touching her face as if for the first time in a long while. The world hasn't changed, but the way she sees it has. The noise, the pressure, the endless demands, they are still there. Yet they no longer define her. She carries something deeper now. Something she didn't have before she stopped and listened. In the hospital hallway, the woman walks forward. Whatever news awaits her, there is still uncertainty, still emotion, still the unknown, but she is not walking into it alone. The strength she found in stillness remains with her, quiet and constant. Different lives, different paths, but now connected by something shared. A choice that continues. To trust again tomorrow. To return again when things feel uncertain. To keep walking, even when the road is not clear. Because this journey was never meant to be taken alone. And somewhere beyond these moments, there are others, watching, listening, carrying their own stories, their own questions, their own silent prayers. Some are just beginning, some are returning, some are still searching for where to start. But the invitation remains open. Not just for one moment, but for every day that follows. Walk this journey, stay in the rhythm, return to that place of trust. Again and again. And if this moment spoke to something within, if it felt real, if it felt like the beginning of something, then don't walk alone. Subscribe to the channel, become part of this growing community of faith, and continue this journey, one prayer, one step, one new beginning at a time.